On the blockchain, I'm not going to comment because I need, as I say, I think we just need to look at the details.
Okay, thank you. So pivoting back to blockchain now.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh yes, yes. That's the conference.
Okay, so somehow I went from taking on my first blockchain project back in 2020 to building a new career in this sector in isolation during COVID, to interviewing the former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson about blockchain at a conference in Singapore little more than 2 years after I first started. Now, if you had told me that back at the beginning of my journey, you can bet I would have never believed you. Today, I'm going to be sharing the insights I gained from this experience from a number of angles, so this video is going to be divided into 3 parts. I'll begin by sharing some of the context around the interview, my thoughts about what Boris said in the context of crypto policy actions that were taken in the UK during Boris's premiership, and I'll also share a little bit about how I prepared myself for all this, because I'd never done an interview of this kind or even been on a business conference stage ever, and I felt pretty nervous about that. So I took some deliberate steps to help myself as best I could, and I'd like to share some of that with you as well in case it could help you out too. The next section will segue into the keynote speech that Boris gave at the conference before the interview, and then the final section will feature that interview that I and my colleague Jesse had with him. Now, as I will explain in the first part of this video, Boris and his team wanted to talk about innovation more broadly at this conference, and so the interview wasn't just focused on blockchain. However, to respect the time of those of you who only want to hear what he had to say about blockchain, I'll be marking out those questions in the timestamps that I'll provide in the description section below this video. So that's it. Let's go. Welcome. If you're new to this channel, my name is Roderick McKinley. I'm an advisor and educator working in the blockchain space, specializing in tokenomics. My aim here is to build understanding and best practice in a way that isn't sensationalist or led by conspiracy thinking, and to explain things in ways that ordinary business people would respect and understand. Now, YouTube tells me that about 70% of you who are watching this content aren't yet subscribers, so this time, please make sure you do. I'm close to the 1,000 subscriber mark now, and I'd love to have that achievement to encourage intelligent, high-quality guests to come on here and share their valuable insights and experience with all of us. So please subscribe today and share this video to help make that happen. Okay, time to talk about that interview. How did it happen? Well, the opportunity truly came out of the blue for me. The organizers of the conference Parallel Chain are clients of mine. As their tokenomics advisor, I'd helped them to create a strong economic narrative for their tokenomics and their new token offering. I had also supported them with some of their pitches, and they thought that the communication skills that they'd seen me display would come off well in a live setting. So they invited me to be Master of Ceremonies and a panel moderator at their new conference, the International Symposium for Blockchain Advancements, or ISBA for short. And they also invited me to interview their keynote speaker for this conference, who was none other than Boris Johnson, ex-Prime Minister of the UK. I got to share this privilege with a fellow MC from the Parallel Chain team, Jesse Chan, and we were both asked to prepare our own sets of questions for Boris and to send them in for his team to review. Now, in case it doesn't make it outside the UK national press, Boris divides opinions. But none of those issues had any bearing on the context and opportunity of our interview. We were being given an opportunity to speak to a person who's been in a position where all the wants and troubles of an entire nation are vying for his limited time and attention. And yet, despite that, during his time in office, blockchain and crypto moved up the list of priorities and substantial policy actions were taken towards them. Let me explain what I mean. Boris became UK Prime Minister in 2019, and the government initiated a formal consultation on the regulatory approach to crypto assets and stablecoins in January of 2021. The responses to that consultation were published in April of 2022, confirming intentions by the government to bring in some stablecoins into the existing legislative framework that handles digital payments, and that it would also be a good idea to develop a new sandbox regime for experimental financial market structures. On the same day that the response to the consultation is published, the Treasury releases a press statement quoting then Chancellor Rishi Sunak as saying, "It's my ambition to make the UK a global hub for crypto asset technology." For those of you watching in the US, the Chancellor of the Exchequer is a comparable public role to that of the US Treasury Secretary. This press release also included a further headline-grabbing statement of the Treasury saying that it would be looking into getting the Royal Mint to issue its very first sterling-denominated NFT. All of these actions are very clearly intended to signal a much more welcoming posture towards the blockchain industry in the UK, something that we're seeing being borne out with more news coming through today. So even though Boris is not a tech expert, I was still hoping to get some interesting insight into the reality of how blockchain, with all its complicated history, could end up rising through the policy agenda in this way, and what it helped to convince those involved that it was worth doing that in a positive manner. The way I saw it, if we can learn from what happened there, then we might be able to advance the case of blockchain to other lawmakers as well. So aiming for that goal, I did all my research and prepared my questions, sending them in earnest over to his team, but unfortunately they got back to me and said that they wanted the interview to handle innovation in a broader way, so questions had to be redrafted. Fortunately though, I did ask for permission to ask follow-up questions, and that allowed me to get in an additional question spontaneously that I think really goes to the heart of what we were all struggling with at that time post-FTX. How can you responsibly experiment with building something that's incredibly new when doing so is inherently risky at the same time? So what impression did Boris make on me? Well, he's jovial and a charmer as everyone says he is, and he is also eloquent. I think his keynote speech, although not narrowly focused on blockchain, met the tone of our post-FTX moment as an industry, because in it he talks about all the things that have gone wrong historically in our pursuit of innovation and material progress, but noting importantly how all those follies and errors intrinsically belong to the same journey which eventually comes to bear fruit. After the conference, we were fortunate enough to have a closed-door session with Boris where we talked some more about blockchain, mostly him asking us questions, which I thought was rather genial. Yet I was left with this impression that Boris already understood a lot more than he was letting on. I don't know why he would present himself in that way, but to give you a specific example, at what moment he asked the room, "And what's this about it only going one way, like some sort of lobster pot?" And of course that cut a laugh out of the room, but I think you would only be able to pose a joke like that if you already understood the material implications of blockchain immutability and finality of execution. So how much does Boris really know about blockchain? Well, who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. Anyway, pivoting to a different personal perspective in the run-up to this event, I found myself getting noticeably nervous. Old imposter issues can creep back in when I have to don a suit and a tie, and I also noticed that my nerves had been acting up when I was introducing myself in public at the first blockchain meetups that I was taking part in after the pandemic in London. And this felt weird to me because I recognized the nervous version of me from quite a few years back in my past, and I didn't fully understand why he was showing up now when I otherwise feel really comfortable and confident talking to my clients in private, who themselves are intelligent, experienced, and critical professionals in their own right. Luckily, by coincidence, I heard about a book on a podcast called The Confident Mind, a battle-tested guide to unshakable performance, written by Dr. Nate Zinsser. Sounds good, right? I'm really happy to recommend it to you. This guy coaches all kinds of people who have to perform in really high-pressure situations, including surgeons, Marines, Olympic athletes. It's not woo-woo. He tells all his stories and makes his recommendations in ways that don't appeal to anything supernatural. It comes with practical exercises that you can actively do for yourself to reframe your nerves as a positive preparation for action, to normalize your anxieties and feelings and not take them as a sign that you're not cut out for this, and to help you visualize yourself in these situations, taking mastery over your task. It's all anecdotal, there's no randomized control study data involved, but I still found it helpful and encouraging, and I expect I'll be coming back to it in the future. So I'm definitely happy to recommend it to you in case you think it might be helpful for you also. Okay, that's all I wanted to say in this section. Next up is a video of Boris's keynote, and then following that is the interview. Remember, I've put in timestamps and labels for all the questions in that part that specifically deal with blockchain in case those are the parts he specifically wished to skip to. Also, I should point out that ISBA have announced that they will be returning for their second year and they're receiving applications. So if you want to get involved, or if you're in or near Singapore around that time, December 2023, you should definitely be keeping an eye out for it in case you can come to check it out.
Good afternoon. Here to introduce you the Right Honorable Boris Johnson, the former United Kingdom Prime Minister. And please do not use your camera to take pictures. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Hi, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for having me today. It's fantastic to be back in Singapore, where there's so much energy on the streets that it feels like you're having some kind of psychic defibrillator when you walk around. And it's very, very interesting to be talking to this group of blockchain pioneers, people who are at the cutting edge of a new and still infant technology whose possibilities the whole world is now struggling to assess. And given the huge controversy that already surrounds some use cases, and given all the delicacies and sensitivities, I will do my best to tiptoe through the minefield this afternoon with the tact for which I am famed. You've chosen the right place for this conference. Singapore is one of the most innovative societies on earth, the birthplace of the USB stick, countless other developments in IT, a place where they're tackling the problems of global food supply with such daring innovations as synthetic lobster meat, vertical tomato farms, where they long anticipated the needs of pandemics such as COVID by inventing the infrared temperature scanner that you just point at people's foreheads, to say nothing of the Singapore Sling, whose formula was invented in the Raffles Hotel where I am staying. And here in Singapore, every day, your outstanding researchers and scientists are working on all the problems that afflict humanity, from climate change and species loss to the immediate crises we face in supply chains and in our energy markets. And of course, whether a Singapore Sling is or is not the best cure for jet lag. And the reason I'm fundamentally optimistic about these challenges is that they are all fixable, and fixable with technology. And I want this afternoon to talk about the technological innovations that will save us today and enrich future generations. And I want to advance a wholly original 4-part theory of innovation, because it seems to me that when human beings make any great or momentous discovery, we lurch through 4 phases. First, fear. Then skepticism about the use case. Then some speculative mania that's followed by the bursting of some gigantic bubble. And finally, amid the debris, lasting and unmistakable progress. So let's take some examples. The balloon itself, a perfect visual metaphor for the innovative cycle. When the first hydrogen balloon took off in 1783, it took its first human passenger 15 miles across the countryside near Paris, And the peasants were so outraged and frightened by the apparition that they attacked it when it landed. As for the use case, Dr. Johnson told his friend Hester Thrale in the same year, 1783, that he couldn't see any purpose for the hot air balloon whatever. An observation that was followed, of course, by complete balloonomania in the UK, as hundreds of thousands started to turn out and watch balloon launches, and coaches were designed to look like balloons. Women wore balloon designs on their undergarments and special balloon hats and all kinds of balloon merchandise. And that mania lasted 3 years until 1786, when it was all over. The balloon bubble burst, and people said it was a lot of hot air. But of course, in that period, humanity had taken a giant step, even if we didn't quite see it at the time. If it had not been for the obsessive daring and egotism of those balloonists, we would not have begun the astonishing progress towards powered flight that landed me in Changi Airport last night. Take the railways. Again, step one, fear. The first thing the first train ever did, Stephenson's rocket, was to run over and kill a member of the British cabinet called William Huskisson, president of the Board of Trade, proving, which what I know myself, British politics is a very risky business. The public was so alarmed that they believed that train travel at 30 miles an hour would do irreparable damage to your spine, and some doctors said that the rattling and jolting was likely to cause unnatural sexual excitement. And the skepticism persisted until, of course, the whole country became convulsed with railway mania in the 1840s. You remember the most colossal stock market bubble of the 19th century, in which the British middle classes were persuaded to make disastrous investments in railway projects in places they'd barely heard of in Latin America and in the United States. And yet, even after that bubble had so spectacularly detonated, the result was lasting change in the whole of UK infrastructure, and private companies were sufficiently well capitalized to build the world's first underground trains in 1863, suddenly enabling people to commute to the heart of the City of London and beginning London's lead as the most productive city on earth, a lead that it has hardly lost to this day. And then, of course, we come to the greatest revolution of all, the discovery of the power of machines to process and transmit information. And again, first, we were fearful of these super intelligent machines that could take over our lives. And we think of HAL, the clinically depressed and homicidal computer in Arthur C. Clarke's 2001 A Space Odyssey, remember, published in 1968. And then there was skepticism about the use cases. The president of IBM, who said that there would be a maximum world market for 5 computers, admittedly he said that in 1943, to Ken Olsen, president of the Digital Equipment Corporation, who brilliantly prophesied in 1977, there is no reason why anyone would want a computer in their home. Pure genius. Or the New York Times technology expert who predicted that Apple would never produce a mobile phone. Give that man a Pulitzer. And then humanity proceeded from this gloriously erroneous apathy to a series of tech manias and bubbles, not least the dot-com bubble that burst in 2000 with such a massive loss of share value and loss of some famous company names, at the end of which, all of which, in spite of all the delirium and delusions, the progress is still enormous. And thanks to the internet, our lives are being transformed both in the UK and in this amazing city-state, where innovators such as are here today, every day, put the app into Singapore. And so, for me, the lessons from the 4 stages of the innovative cycle are very clear. Lesson number 1, fear. Fear is almost certainly overdone. It's the residue of ancient superstition about technology. Remember, humanity has been paranoid about this ever since the Titan Prometheus gave us the first living flame, which you remember he concealed for some reason in a tube of a fennel flower. And the ancient Greeks decided that Zeus must have punished him for his effrontery by chaining him for eternity to a crag on the Tartarus Mountains and causing an eagle to come and peck out his liver. That was the price he paid for being a technological pioneer. And if we feel guilty about technology, I think that's absurd, because most technology is not in itself dangerous, let alone sinful. It's morally neutral. And the second lesson from the four-stage cycle is that skepticism about the practical uses, the use cases, is generally wrong too. And we may not find the right use case first time. I think of the vacuum cleaner tycoon and nuclear power enthusiast who prophesied in 1955 that within 10 years everyone would have a nuclear-powered vacuum cleaner. We're not quite there yet. The third lesson is that when there is a mania and a bubble, and when you have speculators who are simply driving up the price of a new technology or the assets related to it by finding a wider and wider pool of punters to exploit, then you do need measures to protect the public against Ponzi schemes. And the final and most important lesson is that in the end, all these revolutions have changed, all the ones I've described have changed the world for the better. And they've helped to give young people chances that they might not otherwise have had. They've increased life expectancy. They've done wonderful things for our world. And given that it is now so urgent to find new solutions for our problems of climate change or an aging population, cheaper, greener power, new drugs and new treatments for dementia, we need to innovate more, and we need to optimize the conditions in which those breakthroughs can happen. And if there's a recipe for innovation, then the number one ingredient is a free and open society. And let me see, so of course, there are all sorts of reasons for wanting such a society in addition to innovation. I hope people will not mind me saying that this has been a pretty terrible year for the world's coercive autocracies. Putin is going to lose his wicked, foolish, and catastrophic war in Ukraine. And the zero-COVID policy of Xi Jinping is palpably failing. Both leaders appear to be locked into disastrous policies in which their egos are personally engaged. And the problem they both have is that there is no one to contradict them. No free media to dissent, no backbenchers to rebel. And even if democracy has its flaws, I would say that the global events of the last year confirm that democracy is indeed the worst system in the world, except for all the others. And this year has also confirmed that it is the free market, open, pluralist democracies that are the best at technological innovation. Let me ask all of you, see if you're paying attention, who's been vaccinated against COVID? Who's been vaccinated against COVID? Okay. Who hasn't been vaccinated against COVID? Everybody has. Okay, fair enough. Can I ask anybody who had Sputnik? Did anybody have Sputnik? Did anybody have Sinovac or Sinopharm? Right. Look, I mean, folks, there's no easy or tactful way to say this. But the difference between the vaccines produced by the free market democracies and the pharmaceutical industries in those countries and the others is pretty clear. One set worked and the others didn't. And there are all sorts of reasons why that might be the case. If you have to answer to shareholders rather than party bosses, if you're driven by scientific rigor and free market competition, then you're perhaps more likely to produce a vaccine that survives and works in the global marketplace. But there are other reasons as well. And they're all to do with people such as yourselves, the innovators themselves. I'll ask you a question, general knowledge question. In which country was the first approved and effective COVID vaccine administered? Does anybody happen to know the answer? I'll give you a clue. It was the same country that invented the steam engine, the machine gun, the jet engine, the first civilian nuclear reactor, the MRI scanner, the World Wide Web, penicillin, the trouser press, you name it. The country that has 4 of the top 10 universities in the world, where one Cambridge college has won more Nobel prizes than Russia and China combined, and which, according to no less an authority than the Straits Times, is ranked even higher by some measures than Singapore itself as a home of innovation. In other words, the UK. And yes, of course, it's partly a question of government funding and commitment. I can tell you that we in the UK are determined to entrench our status as a science superpower. We've more or less doubled the research budget. We've created a new advanced research and innovation agency modeled on the American DARPA. And we're taking steps to take advantage of our new regulatory freedoms, to be faster, more agile, to be able to cope with the new and to cope with innovation. One of the reasons that we had the world's first approved vaccine, the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, was because Brexit had allowed our Medical Health Regulation Authority to give the first approval months ahead. And that meant we were able to come out of lockdown faster than any other European country. And that meant we were able to save lives at the same time. But even if you get the funding right, even if you get the regulation right, that's not enough to produce a truly innovative society. You need, as I say, the talent to want to come and live and work there. So let me ask you, do you think freedom-loving people, offbeat, original minds, will want to live in a society where journalists are shot and free speech is suppressed, and where LGBT rights are officially scorned? I hope you understand what I'm thinking of. Will they want to go and live and do their researches in a place where COVID protesters or anti-lockdown protesters are banged up by the riot police, and where the entire senior leadership of the Communist Party seems not to contain a single woman? Will they want to go there? Innovation happens when you have a fizzing cyclotron of culture and ideas, where brilliant people can go to the best live music venues, jazz clubs, eat in the best restaurants. By the way, at one stage, London had more Michelin stars than Paris itself, until the French totally freaked out and started throwing Michelin stars around in a slightly North Korean way. Innovation happens when people can say exactly what they think and meet whomsoever they choose and love whomsoever they choose and live their lives however they like, provided, of course, they do no harm to others. And that is the secret. Add on the rule of law, the language, the time zone, access to capital markets. And that is why the United Kingdom has a tech unicorn born every fortnight, more than France, now has more than France, Germany, and Israel combined. And above all, innovation happens in societies that are open and outward-looking and turned to the world, and willing not just to exchange people, but ideas with their friends. And if you want an example of how exchange between the UK and Singapore has already changed the world, I'd give you Hevea brasiliense, the Brazilian rubber tree, that never did well in Latin America because of leaf blight until the 1870s, when a man called Henry Wickham stole 77,000 seeds and germinated from Brazil, and germinated them in Kew Gardens, and then took 22 seedlings to the botanical gardens in Singapore, where they flourished so mightily and grew so strong and tall that the latex was basically gushing from them in spurts. And that is why it's so fantastic to see that exchange continuing today. huge Singapore investments in the UK, I'm proud to say, and the number of UK firms in Singapore is up from 4,500 in 2019, and notwithstanding COVID, is now at 5,700 today. And by the way, just imagine if that rubber miracle had not happened. Imagine if that Kew germinated seedling had not been planted in Singapore soil 130 years ago. There would be no Malayan rubber industry. In fact, there would be no world rubber industry at all. No Burberry Macintoshes, no condoms, no rubber tires to drive the automobile revolution of the 20th century. And so, finally, let's hear it for the openness that produces the intellectual ferment and cross-fertilization that produces the flash of originality that drives innovation and lasting progress. And let's hear it for the Singaporeans and Brits flowing between our countries with the, like, as I'm sure some of you do, with the boinging, bouncing irrepressibility of the rubber balls that we jointly introduced to the world. There is no gold, nor oil, nor coal, nor iron under the streets of Singapore. All there is in this amazing place is the power of the human imagination, the power to see how a mildewed Brazilian shrub can change the fortunes of humanity in the right place. And it is that innovative power that I want you all to celebrate this afternoon. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for listening.
Johnson, if you take a seat here, please. Thank you so much, Mr. Johnson. It's great to have your abilities as an inspiring speaker to remind us that we're once again going through a reprise of Promethean promise. And we'd like to put some rather broad questions on this matter of innovation to you. So the landscape of so-called big tech social media is shifting, with Elon Musk taking over Twitter, with measures to regulate social media in the UK, with the Online Safety Bill, and new open source alternatives like Mastodon taking hold. How do you think social media has influenced politics, and what comes next in this space?
I think social media has had an incredible effect on politics, and some good, some bad. I think it's been important that people are able to contribute directly to the voters, to talk to them in a very engaging and direct way, as people try to do on social media platforms. The former President of the United States being a key example, I suppose. But what I find about Twitter in particular is there's something about it that seems to polarize opinion. And everybody seems to gravitate to one camp or another. I don't know what you feel about this, but and I think there's something about the genre, the brevity that's required, that makes people very, very punchy in their assertions and more polemical. And it can become quite an intimidating environment, Twitter. And I think actually politicians, they're quite thin-skinned. And what happens is they get, when something happens, and there's a massive, what you call a Twitter pylon, and everybody starts tweeting at them, hashtag this, the other, whatever. They can't take it. And they sort of, it's like nothing that they've been prepared for. And I think that it has a curious effect. And so I think it's very, very important for politicians to remember that social media platforms are not the same as the voters. And a twit storm can flare up like a typhoon in the South China Seas and cause your plane to buffet violently. This happened to me the other night. But it doesn't really reflect what's going on in the rest of the world.
What could they do to change this format to better reflect voters?
I think, we'll grow, we'll adapt, we'll learn to have thicker skins about it. I think that's the answer. these are all wonderful new technologies which enable us to communicate directly, and we've got to find ways of doing it without feeling kind of beaten up. And you know, I don't read much of it for all sorts of good reasons. But you know, I think that's what we need to do. I don't know about Mastodon. I'm afraid you're going to have to educate me about Mastodon. Is it any good?
I haven't used it myself yet.
Oh, right.
But, yeah.
Okay. Well, look, I mean, you know, suffice it to say, I tell you what's happened with this thing. I go back to the earlier point. When the internet first got going, I used to write articles in the Daily Telegraph, and at the end of every article, when people thought they were really, as it were, writing letters to the editor, and so it was wonderful because people used to say, another sterling effort by Boris Johnson. He has really hit the nail on the head this time. You know, a lot of points very competently covered, this kind of thing. And that all changed rapidly when they discovered that they could be anonymous and really put the boot in. But that's good. I mean, you know, it has it's changed a lot. It's got more aggressive. I think politics in America has got more polarized, and Twitter is helping to drive that. And we need to work out how to deal with that.
Thank you. Okay, second question. As Prime Minister, you aim to unleash the UK as a science superpower, and you pointed to that in your speech. What do you consider to be the most exciting and crucial technological developments and advances that are going to shape the next half century?
Well, I think that clearly clean green technology is going to be vital. Who's a climate change skeptic here? Does anybody not believe in? Is there anybody sufficiently? Huh? So I saw a hand twitch there. No, sorry, no. He was just rubbing his nose. I think it's like is anybody going to confess to being remotely skeptical about climate? No. Everybody understands that this is a real problem. It's a massive problem. I mean, even in the UK, it was 40 degrees in July this year, which, you know, in my view, may explain why British people find it very difficult to think at 40 degrees heat in the summer, and I think it may explain some of the irrational decisions that you saw in the Westminster round about that period. I mean, I think future historians may want to look at the role of global warming in the change of government there, but we need to fix that. And we have the technological fixes. So clean green technology, not just more wind farms, and though that's fantastically important, and we're doing well. More nuclear, carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, solar. Actually, we have a lot of scope for solar still in the UK. And one of the reasons for not abandoning hydrocarbons is, of course, that you can use them to make hydrogen as well. Look, I think there's massive potential in all of those technologies. There's one other thing I would mention, which is nuclear fusion. Now you're going to laugh at me, but I think I used to represent Culham in Oxfordshire, which is the hottest place in the universe. I mean, much hotter than Singapore, and it was because they got a fusion reactor there, and they keep telling me that it's only 20 years away. I mean, admittedly, they told me that 20 years ago, but I'd put a small side bet on fusion as well.
Thank you. Over to Jesse.
And there's plenty of other. Sorry, you asked me about all technology. I mean, there's AI. I mean, one of the reasons we set up this Advanced Research and Innovation Agency is because we want to make big long-term bets on things that may not come off. And there will be a lot of serendipity. We won't know which things are going to work and which won't. But we know we're interested in AI, we're interested in quantum computing, the whole range. Cyber, I mean, biosciences. I mentioned the elderly. That's going to be a massive issue. How are we going to help people to live longer with a better quality of life? We're all living longer, but are we living longer with better quality? Not necessarily. And you know, if we can find something that will really help with Alzheimer's and with aging. That would be fantastic for humanity. So we're putting a lot of effort into that as well. And you know about the Crick Institute in London. I'm trying to encourage you all to come to London, by the way. This is a shameless pitch. I would do the whole of the UK. We've got fantastic facilities there.
Tell us about the Crick Institute.
Well, the Crick Institute is this incredible, colossal centre for bioscientific exploration of all kinds. And they're looking at, therapies for cancer, for Alzheimer's, for all sorts of things, with DNA.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jesse.
Thank you. I think we can get a little bit more specific from the next question about blockchain and crypto. So the global crypto space is under scrutiny after the collapse of FTX and different black swan news. Many policymakers remain arguably hostile to crypto, especially in Europe and in the US. However, blockchain as a technology does not really equal cryptocurrency. How do we protect the technology from a blanket ban and overarching regulation against crypto?
Look, I think you've made exactly the right distinction. And for a layman like me, it seems pretty clear that there's the blockchain idea, which is seems to me to have all sorts of possibilities to allow people to do deals with each other without the need for a third party to verify or validate or authenticate or whatever. And I can see how that would help for people and for companies and what have you. And then there's this wholly separate thing of cryptocurrencies, and it's one particular use case of the blockchain. And I've got to tell you, I'm with the Bible. You remember Jesus in the Bible. At one stage they say, should they pay their taxes? And he picks up a coin and he says, remember what he says? He says, whose name and superscription appears on this coin? Right? And they say, Caesar's. He says, well, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, unto God the things that are God's. But my question, and I say this entirely innocently, is, well, who is the Caesar in this case, in the case of the cryptocurrency? Who's in charge of the clattering train? Because I've seen some pretty shocking headlines recently about this whole venture. And I think that we're going to need to have some way of holding people to account. I think if it's going to succeed and if it's going to build trust, then it's obviously got to be regulated in such a way as to command confidence and visibly to protect all participants. That's my view of it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Staying on the topic of regulation, FTX's black box model shows peril of centralization. So the root of the problem does not really lie in decentralized finance, aka DeFi, or crypto, but that people are conflating DeFi with products of centralization, such as centralized exchanges and custodial wallets. Are regulators aware of this situation, and what role is there for crypto towards a better relationship with mainstream politics? Will that ever happen?
I think it's got to happen if this thing is going to have a future. And I think what needs to happen is that policymakers need to understand better, some of these issues that I've mentioned. I mean, if you've got a currency, then someone's issuing it, someone's in charge of interest rates, someone's in charge of seigniorage, someone's in charge of the velocity of circulation, whatever. How does it work? And you need to have some sort of regulation. That's my view. And I think particularly in view of the stories that we've seen, which have been very troubling, I think it's important that you build public confidence that the interests of ordinary people are going to be protected. Because I tell you one thing, I've got a long experience now of these brilliant ideas, and when people pile in, when ordinary people are encouraged to pile in and become investors, right? And then it all goes wrong, and it's a disaster. I tell you who has to pick up the tab is the taxpayer. And so, ultimately there's no escaping the responsibility of of government. So we'll have to. There's got to be a working together. Policymakers need to understand what this thing is, and they need to understand how to regulate it.
Thank you. Roderick, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. We're back to green tech. You were recently back at COP27. The pace of action on climate is a matter of concern worldwide. You particularly emphasized the role of green technology and green industries. So you highlighted just a few of them now. So I wonder what you could say about the importance of collaboration and the different vested interests that we have, and how those have maybe been rebalanced a bit by current events. Because we need everybody to come together on this.
I've got you. Yeah, look, I mean, I think, so you're quite right. So COP26, which you may not remember, that was a big thing in Glasgow a year ago now. And that was a big moment for the world, because everybody came together and they basically agreed to get rid of about, I think, 6 gigatons of carbon from the atmosphere. It was a massive commitment. And the Indians came up with some big commitments. The Chinese, they're doing phenomenal work in China, actually, of building renewable energy. 150 gigawatts. We're doing 50 gigawatts of offshore wind. The Chinese do already this year, China has built 150 gigawatts of renewable energy. It's unbelievable what they're doing. So people are really making progress. So, lots of countries agreed to get rid of internal combustion engine cars. Lots of countries agreed to go past, to get rid of coal. But then Putin invaded Ukraine. And it was a catastrophe. It's an absolute catastrophe. And you've seen the spike in the price of hydrocarbons. It's really rocked everybody. And they're thinking maybe we can't end our dependency as fast as all that. And I think my message would be, look, that's the wrong way to approach this. I think that what we should do is actually accelerate the move away from hydrocarbons. This is an opportunity. And by the way, Putin is basically cutting his own throat, because what he's doing, he's driving away some of his most important customers, and he's accelerating their move towards cleaner, greener solutions. And that is what the world should be doing. And we are. So, I said 50 gigawatts of offshore wind. The UK has about 150 gigawatts. We use about 100 gigawatts a day, as it were. That's the total demand. 50 gigawatts of offshore wind alone is a huge amount. Plus, we're going to build a nuclear reactor every year rather than every 10 years. We are. Why are you laughing? It's absolutely true. We were. That's to say, when I was last in command of the project, and I have no reason to doubt that the present government has lost that ambition. So we're I was going to say steaming ahead, but that's not quite the right metaphor. We've got our foot to the EV floor in a low carbon way and we're accelerating on that. And that's what I think the world should be doing. And at COP27 in Sharm, the good thing that happened there was that you saw these just environmental transition partnerships where you help countries, so Vietnam, Indonesia, India, South Africa, the multinational development banks, plus Western finance, is going into helping those countries to leapfrog, to go ahead to clean green solutions and get rid of their dependency on coal and hydrocarbons. So that was, a lot of people said that COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh wasn't a great moment. Actually, they made a lot of progress on that. And doing it with individual country packages is a very smart thing to do.
Okay, thank you. Jessie.
I think we are at the end of 2022, and as we mentioned, there's been quite some unfortunate events, but we have also made great progress.
Quite some unfortunate events, yeah. I'll say so. You mean the war in Ukraine? I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I've underplayed that, by the way. I think it's an absolute crime against humanity, and you know. Anyway, but there you go. Sorry.
Okay. But we've also made great progress in terms of like digital transformation. There's a financial revolution, the DeFi situation. But so 2023 presents a series of global challenges on the economy and on security. What are the most important qualities for global leaders to demonstrate today, whether in politics or in business? And what lessons did you learn from your time as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom?
Yeah, look, I think you know, the most important quality is obviously survival. It's a very useful thing. I think I certainly admire. You know, it's a bit of a bucking bronco leadership these days, and I think corporate leadership too, probably, by the way. But I think the things that I was very proud of a lot of things we did, and you know, we did win the biggest majority for my party for 40 years, a biggest share of the vote since 1979. We had a huge, and we then got on and did some very difficult things. Brexit was not easy to deliver, and we got it done. And by the way, you will read in a lot of nonsense in the British media about Brexit. Is, you know, as Chow En-lai said of the French Revolution, it is too early to tell exactly how Brexit will turn out, but I have no doubt that it will be massively net positive for the UK. And it's an ongoing. I mentioned the COVID vaccines. Literally, we would not have been able to do that if we'd remained in the European Medicines Agency and remained in the EU. But there are many other things. We've done a deal with the Australians and with the Americans. I don't know whether you're familiar with this, called the AUKUS agreement on nuclear-powered submarines, and rather nuclear-powered vacuum cleaners, which, as I say, are yet to write. But nuclear-powered submarines we're doing, and it is just inconceivable to me that we would have done that deal, which did ruffle some feathers in Paris, if, to put it mildly, if we'd been in the EU. But it's a great thing. It helps the UK to strengthen our alliances in this part of the world. It means that you know, it shows that we're committed to Asia, to the Asia-Pacific region. It's a big part of our Indo-Pacific tilt. I'd also mention the arms to Ukraine. You know, we were the first European country to give significant quantities of lethal aid to the Ukrainians at a particularly crucial time. And you probably didn't see the sequence, but those weapons, those NLAWs they're called, not to be confused with in-laws, but NLAWs, anti-tank missiles, arrived in Ukraine in I think about the middle of January. And they were very, very important for helping the Ukrainians to defeat those Russian tank columns in the early weeks of the war. And I think that they played a very important part. And I think that the whole stance that the UK took on Ukraine, which was very much, you know, very purist, is not one that. But let me put it this way: I think that if we'd remained in the EU, I think the lunar pull of the rest of the EU club would have made things very different. And look, I want to make a strong argument that the UK will become even more attractive as a place to live and invest once we deliver on all that Brexit stuff. And things like Solvency II, MiFID, the chemicals directives, you know, all those things are opportunities to do things differently and better. On the blockchain, I'm not going to comment because I need, you know, as I say, I think we just need to look at the details.
Okay, thank you. So pivoting back to blockchain now.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Oh yes, yes, that's the conference. I just want to pick up on something you said.
Hands up here who isn't involved in the blockchain. Everybody involved in the blockchain. Fantastic. Okay.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just picking up on something you said, you highlighted the inescapable nature of risk and cast it as you know, a human adventure marching towards progress. And we are trying to innovate creating consumer-facing solutions. And you rightly point out that controls need to be in place and that we can't just have people falling through the net and for the taxpayer to collect the bill. So how do would you be able to venture saying something more about how we reconcile these two opposing concerns?
I think you just have to convince people that the use cases are real and that work for them in their lives, as opposed to this being about speculation in a new type of financial market or instrument. And that's all. And I think that people can see the distinction. That's where this thing needs to go.
Thank you, very clear. Hello?
Is that the wrong answer? We've been cut off.
Testing.
Hello?
Well, all right. So, this is our last question, Boris. Do you have any words for innovators or the blockchain community?
Yeah, look, I have my general message to to innovators everywhere is that, apart from Singapore, which, with the possible exception of Singapore, which is obviously a fantastic place for innovation, come to London. And no, not just London, by the way. Come to the UK, because one thing I didn't say that I was proud of achieving is we launched a massive agenda of levelling up across the whole of the UK. And I mentioned those unicorns, those billion-dollar startups. They're now happening across the whole of the UK, and across the whole of the UK. If you come there, you will find we have special talent visa. To help you get in. We have, I think, one of the lowest corporation tax rates still, despite everything, in the G7. And across the whole UK, we're putting in, I think, the things that you need. So we're making the streets safer, we're skilling up the population, we're putting in huge quantities of transport infrastructure, the biggest transport infrastructure revolution for 100 years or so. We're putting gigabit broadband, not just super fast, but gigabit, a distinction I'm sure you will appreciate. And when I became leader of the country, we had, I think, 7% of our premises had gigabit broadband. It's now 70% of households have it. It's a massive change in the UK, and it makes it far more livable and a much, much better place to do tech-related business. Plus, it's a fantastic country. What's not like? And I mentioned the jazz clubs and the restaurants and the museums. One museum alone attracts more people than several European countries combined, which I'm too tactful to name. It rains more in Rome, by the way. I don't know whether it rains. I don't know whether it does. I mean, total annual precipitation. There you go. I rest my case.
Very well made, Boris. Very well made. That's all the questions we have for you today.
Well, thank you.
Oh, you keep me muted. All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson, for joining this conversation. It's a great honor to have you here.
Well, thank you. Can I say it's a real privilege to be here, and I will watch the progress of the Bitcoin community and the blockchain community, I should say, with fascination, and see where it goes.
Please do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.